everyone. I'd like to make the same disclaimer as a team that what I share with you is my reflections together with two SEAC members, Jean-Marc Mignon and Stavros Georgiou. So of course it doesn't represent the view of the committee as such. On the other hand, I'm very grateful for the input from committee members during handling the applications in the past year, because that is what the reflection is built on, and also the feedback I have from ECHA colleagues. So what I will talk of today is then what we look at in evaluating an application in SEAC and what we have received so far, and also some recommendations for applicants. And what do we look at then? Well, that is given in the regulation. So we evaluate the application and the public consultation comments to formulate an opinion on whether the socio-economic benefits of authorization outweigh the risk of continued use when the risks are not adequately controlled. We look at technical feasibility, economic feasibility, and availability of alternatives, and then the review period, which is sort of an outcome of the evaluation. So if I start then with the suitability, availability of alternatives, first we need to conclude on the technical feasibility of alternatives and whether that an alternative is able to perform an equivalent function or eliminate the need for that function. So it's not only, as a previous speaker pointed out, necessarily another chemical substance. It can be other solutions, it can also be the alternative. We need to conclude on the economic feasibility of alternatives, whether a transition to alternative will result in a net cost for the applicant. We don't conclude really on the RAC assessment. The RAC assessment forms the basis for us with regard to the risks of alternatives. So that is something we take forward in the process. And that then with regard to the alternative if they are less risky. And then the conclusion on the availability of alternatives, where we often spend quite some time. Are they available in necessary quantities before the sunset date, and then within the review period? That of course has then an important impact on setting the review period. If we then go back to the socio-economic benefits versus the risks, here the SEAC assessment is based on the RAC conclusion on the remaining risk to human health and the environment, and also, and very importantly, the applicant's assessment of human health and environmental impacts in the submitted socio-economic analysis, which is then a necessary part in the when there is a remaining risk. And it has also already been brought up by other speakers that you cannot perhaps always know for sure if you have adequate control, and then it can be better to put in a socio-economic analysis as a backup, which many applicants have done. On the benefit sides, and here we sort of turn it around a little bit from how we expressed it with restriction. On the benefit sides, we have to look at the societal benefits of continued use, the economic impacts, of course, and here we usually have a quantitative analysis. Social impacts, it has usually been done a qualitative analysis, and then the wider economic impacts also in a qualitative manner. The review period then. The review period runs from the sunset date, as you know. And the applicant needs to reapply 18 months prior to the end of this period if they wish to continue the use or place it on the market. And SEAC has developed criteria. We have published a paper on setting the review period. And one starting point here is the RAC recommendation of the remaining magnitude and uncertainty in the remaining risk. Another aspect that is important is the time for transition to an alternative or to find a suitable alternative. And that can include then certification and other regulatory requirements as well. And then we have all the other socioeconomic factors to consider that are relevant, such as investment cycles in the business. Bridging applications has been mentioned. That is, of course, linked to the time of transition. Some users may, in the future, run a more simplified path, spare parts. Uncertainties also has importance in how to setting the review period. And we have then established a standard length that we recommend from the committee on 7 years, long lengths of 12 years, and the short, for example, 4 years. But as you saw from the examples, we have actually had other short review periods as well. This, of course, doesn't bind in any way the Commission. Then they are free to set a review period outside of this. And applicants have then also sometimes stated or applied for other review periods. 18 years, I think, have occurred, for example. But so far, we have not recommended any review period longer than 12 years. General impressions of AFA then, where here I start with 90% from another perspective than Tim did. And I look at the most recent ones. And here we have had a very positive development. So now we see that 90% of the information is in the non-confidential part. And that is after the change in format that we did in April last year. And this makes then the public consultation so much more efficient. And also the committee work more efficient. Because both in RAC and SEAC, we have so far always gone for observed or so-called open sessions, meaning that our stakeholders, observers are allowed to be there. And then we can't display confidential business information. So if you claim that, you make the deliberation in the committees more difficult. And I think it was very good recommendations from one of the previous speakers in really identifying if there is some key item. Well, then of course you're free to submit that and build your applications from it, but don't make unnecessary claims. Many applications have been of good quality from the SEAC perspective. And when it's good quality, then we have an efficient opinion-making process. And many of the opinions have been adopted well ahead of the 10-month period. We also have generally got detailed responses to our questions on alternatives and to the public consultation comments. And as others have mentioned, the trialogues and other communication have been very useful. It has been sometimes bringing new information, but also showing up information with in another perspective. Videos, I think, has been mentioned, pictures, graphs, etc. I also note that the applicant's feedback to ECHA has been positive, but that has been mentioned by others already. So what have we then received? Well, if I look at the big picture, many applicants have done a thorough job with the analysis of alternatives and the socio-economic analysis. Sometimes, however, it's overly lengthy documentation, and that should, of course, be avoided. So our advice is to focus on the business reasons for applying, and that then helps also in the evaluation and the discussion around the application. I also note that you have used all the previous applications, the RAC reference values, and that simplify the applicant's work, but it also helps SEAC in evaluating the health impact assessment and the evaluation. So it's not only reference values, but also those response curves. Many have carried out a full cost-benefit analysis, and that helps then SEAC to evaluate and draw conclusions in our opinion. And then we have this paradox with downstream or upstream applications. So downstream applications, they are much easier also from the SEAC side to evaluate. It's, of course, easier to prepare. It's easier to respond to questions also. But on the other hand, an upstream application is, from a system perspective, perhaps more efficient then because it covers much more. So here, I think Commission representative mentioned this. We need to find the right balance. Then I will also mention of some deficiencies, or what I should say perhaps, where we have learned that there are rooms for improvement, because this is, of course, a learning process for everyone involved, and I'm sure it will continue for a long time that we find ways to improve. If you look then on the analysis of alternatives, and first on the identification part, sometimes in applications the data sources have not been clear. So we want to have clarity how the data was gathered. Some did not explain clearly to us how the short list of alternatives was derived. If the function of the Annex 14 substance could be replaced, and why some sub-uses could be substituted, why other uses in the applications could not be substituted. So it's important to communicate this in a clear manner to us. When it comes then to the assessment of the alternatives, in some applications the time and resources that is required for transition to an alternative could have been clearer. So it's not just to state the time needed, but also to justify it. Sometimes we saw that analysis of commercially available alternatives were missing. And here, of course, the public consultation is also helpful because their information can come in. And when manufacturer importer applied, they sometimes forgot to analyze the technical and economical feasibility for the downstream users, which should then be included. But still, the socio-economic analysis should include, of course, the manufacturer importer costs, even if the alternative is available for some of the downstream users. So we need both perspectives here in the applications. And sometimes the analysis was not written in the view of mind that it provides then input for defining the non-use scenario in the socio-economic analysis. And may that be that will help with the new format we have introduced then. If you look at the deficiency or room for improvement in the socio-economic analysis, sometimes the non-use scenario was not credible from our perspective. So just say that you will shut down, stop a profitable operation, well, it needs to be justified. Otherwise, SEAC can of course not take that as a credible alternative. Sometimes there were no discussion of alternatives identified in the analysis of alternative. What would be the impacts of changing to a worse alternative? So use the information you have already gathered in a way that helps our evaluation. Impacts were not always analyzed from a society's perspective. Lost revenue to someone in the supply chain may be compensated by increased revenue of those supplying or using the alternatives, as Tatjana pointed out in her presentation earlier. Treatment costs in applied for versus the non-use scenarios were not always fully covered. Sometimes investment in the non-use scenario was incorrectly considered as an additional cost, while it's not treated in the applied use scenario. So the applicant did not realize that he would need to make investment in actually both scenarios. And it is the difference between investment costs that is really what is relevant and interesting. And then coming to the comparison of impacts, there were difficulties in comparing risks and benefits in the time scale. And here it can help that you analyze the risks and benefits or what other measures you can bring in to facilitate that for us. Some applications did not focus on the net costs. So if an operation is closed down, it will of course also be savings. And an alternative, even if it's more expensive, it can bring some other advantages like lower energy consumption or better quality. Some applications, they have focused or reported the loss of revenues, and that then inflate the losses since the expenditure will also go down. So loss of net margin or net operational profit may be a more accurate or useful comparator. And then coming to uncertainties, to understand the impacts of uncertainty, we need a clear description in the application and also in the opinions. And I would like to stress that uncertainty is also, or information about uncertainty is also very valuable information. And here you can use different scenarios, but you can also think about showing intervals for your different parameters. And this helps then us to come actually to a clear opinion if this uncertainties is communicated in a clear manner. And then we try, of course, then to communicate it to the decision maker, to the Commission. The level of detail, well, I've already mentioned about that. So if you, to maintain focus, we think it's very good if you look at this as a business case. In the analysis of alternatives, requirements in terms of research and development, cost, times, product changes, certification were sometimes unclear. And then we could not always reproduce the estimates, so it's good if we are given clear, brief overviews and comparisons of the risks and benefits, but also that the estimates are justified by calculation details. And the simple way of doing that is actually to give us some spreadsheets that we can scrutinize the analysis. And some applicants, they did not demonstrate if benefits outweigh the risks, which is of course fundamental if you go for the socio-economic route. So quantify impacts when possible and use qualitative descriptions otherwise, but please attempt that. So some recommendations then to applicants. I think you should also realize that this is very much a matter of communication. So don't dilute your main message with unnecessarily lengthy text. So also here I want to stress this, that it's good to maintain the focus. The non-use scenario should reflect what your company would actually do if it could not obtain an authorization. And there I come back to that we want to have a credible non-use scenario. Be transparent about numbers, assumptions, methodology. As I already said this with the spreadsheets. We want data to be traceable also. I think I said that before, but I can emphasize that again. Confidentiality claims, please avoid them. Actually, if you are transparent, it also increases the confidence in your case. And then justify your review period request with clear arguments. I've seen applications where there just been a request for 18 years or 12 years or whatever it was without this justification. In other cases, there have been a elaborate justification. And I mean, especially if you want to ask for a long review period, then you need to make a very good justification for that. So my last slide then. We have seen analysis of alternatives and socio-economic analysis of varied quality, some excellent, some good, some overlengthy, some unclear. Every application has had qualities. Every application has had something to improve on also. We have seen varied consistency as well. Some is sort of very clear narrative, but some we see that it's written by different groups of people. And of course, you may need a lot of different people to be involved, but then someone needs to bring the thing together to get it into a flowing application. The business case why you apply, that has also varied. Sometimes it's clear, or your description, I should say, has varied. Sometimes it's clear and focused, but not always the case. We have learned quickly to evaluate the applications. The workload in SEAC has, I think, increased several 100% the last year, and now we have substantially increased the membership of SEAC also, and that is, of course, the applications we see in front of us with the Chromates. So I think we are prepared. ECHA is also prepared with the application opinion formats. In last year, we improved the application formats for clarity and transparency. Maybe there are still improvements to be made there in the instructions for them. This year we try also to improve the opinion formats out of the experience from the committee work with the opinions we have already given. And of course that work will also continue in the future. So with that, I'd like to thank you.